Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
Tonight, on First at 9 this Tuesday, the 14th of January 2025. President in China. President Anura Dissanayake to meet Chinese counterpart tomorrow. Several memoranda of understanding to be signed following discussions. Overflowing prosperity. Tamil communities welcome the harvest season with Thai Pongal celebrations. President calls on Sri Lankans to unite with a shared sense of purpose and commitment for the well-being of the island. Wrong call. State Pharmaceuticals Corporation refutes allegations of awarding tender to a blacklisted firm. Says the order was cancelled after discovering firm in question had defaulted on payments. Digital ID. Sri Lanka to commence issuance of digital national identity cards from this month, says the acting Minister of Digital Economy. Denies claims of India having access to Sri Lankans' data.
Chilo Dairy, Sri Lankawama Kiren Perata. Obe Vishwasi Dinu Sensorain, then Lagamati Pharmacy in Labagata Hacker.
Kanta Parisankaragato?
Happy Parisan!
Asian Paints Causeway Aquasafe Vesat Mat doing together at Disney.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9 on Sri Lanka's most trusted news source, Derana 24. I'm Tarindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest developments from Sri Lanka and across the world. Now, devotees across Sri Lanka welcomed the harvest season today with Thai Pongal celebrations. The festival, celebrated by people of Tamil ethnicity the world over, is dedicated to thanking the Hindu sun god for agricultural abundance. In his Thai Pongal message, President Anura Dissanayake called on Sri Lankans to unite with a shared sense of purpose and commitment to ensure the prosperity and well-being of the island.
Thai Pongal, the multi-day Hindu harvest festival predominantly celebrated by people of Tamil ethnicity, is marked today. Tamil communities around the world celebrate the start of Thai, the 10th month in the Tamil calendar, which is considered to be auspicious. Symbolizing prosperity and abundance, the word Pongal means to boil or overflow. The Hindu community dedicates the Thai Pongal festival to thank the Hindu sun god Surya for agricultural prosperity. Concurrently, Tamil communities across the island celebrated the Thai Pongal festival with exuberant rituals. In his Thai Pongal message, President Anura Dissanayake noted that values of the Thai Pongal festival align with the objectives of the recently launched Clean Sri Lanka National Initiative, reflecting the inseparable bond between humanity and nature. President Dissanayake called on everyone to unite with a shared sense of purpose and commitment to ensure the prosperity and well-being of Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, in her message, Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya highlighted that acknowledging and respecting nature is an important aspect of transformation in line with the government's efforts to bring structural, policy and attitudinal transformation and steer Sri Lanka towards a period of renewal. In the meantime, Prime Minister Dr. Amarasuriya presided over the Pongal celebrations at the Prime Minister's office. Meanwhile, another Thai Pongal celebration was held at the Kadireshan Vajirapillayar Kovil in Bambalapitiya under the patronage of opposition leader Sajith Premadasa. Concurrently, another Thai Pongal celebration was held at the Mayurapati Kovil in Kirulapana, which saw the attendance of Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka Santosh Jha, Parliamentarian Ravi Karunanayake, former Parliamentarian Patri Champika Ranawaka, and former Commander of the Sri Lanka Army General Shavendra Silva. Meanwhile, the Thai Pongal festival organised by the Tamila newspaper was held at the Manikka Vinayagar Kovil in Bambalapitiya. The celebration was graced by the board of directors of Liberty Publishers and the newspaper's editorial staff.
පිරිපුන් ජීවිතයකට ඔබ සමගින් පෙරට Union Assurance.
Welcome to Cinnamon Life, South Asia's biggest entertainment hub, where awe awaits.
චන්දුරුසුනේ කාගෙන් මන අපේ සිංහ TV සඳහා සුපිරි ඩීල්.
Sadaharita Plantations Limited, celebrating 22 years of your trust.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
President Anura Dissanayake, who embarked on his second state visit, arrived at Beijing International Airport this morning. The Sri Lankan president was welcomed by Deputy Foreign Minister of China, Chen Xiaodong, and was honoured with a ceremonial guard of honour by the Chinese military. President Dissanayake is scheduled to meet with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping tomorrow. President Anura Dissanayake departed Sri Lanka yesterday en route to China for his second state visit since assuming office. The visit follows his inaugural visit to India from the 15th to the 17th of December last year, during which discussions focused on key projects initiated with the Indian government under the previous administration. Minister of Foreign Affairs Vijitha Herath and Minister of Transport, Highways, Ports and Civil Aviation Bimal Ratnayake are also part of the delegation accompanying the President to China. The visit follows an official invitation extended by Chinese President Xi Jinping shortly after President Disanayake's election in September last year. Before embarking to China, in a post on X, President Dissanayake expressed his eagerness to engage with President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Qiang in efforts to strengthen diplomatic ties between the two nations. President Dissanayake arrived in Beijing earlier today and was formally received by China's Deputy Foreign Minister Chen Xiaodong and ceremonially welcomed by the Chinese military. During the visit, the Sri Lankan president is scheduled to engage in several key activities, including meetings with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping and Premier Li Qiang, among other senior Chinese officials, field visits focused on technological and agricultural development, as well as initiatives aimed at poverty alleviation. The visit will also include high-level business meetings and discussions.
In
the morning, the president will visit the Museum of the Chinese Communist Party. Afterwards, he will visit the Palace of Earthly Tranquility. Subsequently, he will pay his respect to the late leader of the Republic of China, Mao Zedong. In the evening, Chinese President Xi Jinping will ceremonially welcome President Anura Dissanayake at the Great Hall of the People. Following the ceremony, discussions are scheduled to take place between the two leaders and several memoranda of understanding will be signed.
Acting Minister of Digital Economy Eranga Weeraratne says Sri Lanka will commence the issuance of digital national identity cards from this month. Speaking to media, the acting minister assured that the Indian company that is to facilitate the project will not have access to Sri Lankans' biometric data that are to be collected for the digital ID.
The Electronic National Identity Card project commenced in 2012 with the aim of issuing a unique digital ID to every Sri Lankan over the age of 15, comprising biodata and biometric data. However, during a recent press briefing, the Movement for People's Struggle raised concern that the Indian company that will be facilitating the program would have access to the biometric data collected for the digital ID.
Following President Anura Dissanayake
doctor's visit to India, a decision was taken to recommence the electronic ID project. The biometric data used for the ID include retinal scans, DNA, fingerprints, voice, ear shape, gait and handwriting. Our question is, why is all of this biometric data required? Furthermore, this biometric data will be collected by an Indian company, which essentially means that government is giving permission for India to collect every Sri Lankan's biometric data.
Meanwhile today, Acting Minister of Digital Economy Eranga Weeraratne responded to the allegations.
Digital ID කියන project එක අපේ ප්‍රධාන අවශ්‍යතාවයක් විදිහට අපි
We
සලකනවා.
consider the digital ID project to be one of the most urgent needs, and as such it has been prioritized. Attempts were made to establish the database for the digital ID since 2012, and we plan to implement this program within this month. The eNIC project is underway at the Department of Registration of Persons, and we plan to swiftly conclude it so that all new NICs that will be issued from end January or early February will be digital IDs. The cost of the digital ID project is approximately 20 billion rupees, but we plan to cover roughly 50% of that through an Indian grant. This grant was first proposed 2 years ago during former President Ranil Wickremesinghe's tenure, but at that time the proposal was for the Indian company that would facilitate the project to operate it for the first 2 years, which would have included the collection of biometric data. However, after assuming office, we made it clear that the Sri Lankan government should have exclusive access to the system prior to biometric data being entered into it, and that from that moment on the Indian company would be barred from accessing the system. Therefore, the Indian company's involvement is limited to changing the system to suit Sri Lanka's specific requirements. Recently, we saw various individuals with self-serving political agendas convene press briefings to sow fear among people. Only 3 categories of biometric data will be collected for the ID, which are fingerprints, facial features and the appearance of the retina. However, some were claiming that irrelevant data such as voice or gait would also be collected. No other data except those that I mentioned will be collected.
Fast track your career from O levels with eSoft.
ඩයිබටසෝල් සීනිවලින් පරිස්සම් වන ඔබට අමතක නොවන පෝෂණය.
Prime Group ලංකාවේ ප්‍රථම වතාවට හඳුන්වා දෙන land leasing ලේසියෙන් මීටමක්.
Single 1111 up to 60% off from the 11th November to the 17th of November.
Kalani wire කිසිගින්නක් නෑ.
කිසිගින්නක් නෑ. Kalani Fire Shield Wire.
Apico Mattress. සමේ සැපට නිදියන්න Apico Springs foam mattress මාදිලි රසකින්.
The State Pharmaceuticals Corporation asserts that allegations of a tender for an oral medication being awarded to a blacklisted company are false. Issuing a statement, SPC Chairman Dr. Manuj Krishantha Veerasinghe emphasised that steps were taken to cancel the tender after it was discovered that the company in question had defaulted on payments.
On the 11th of January this year, the Doctors' Trade Union Alliance for Medical and Civil Rights alleged that the SPC had approved the award of a tender to a blacklisted Bangladeshi company for the import of disinfectants used for cleaning patients' mouths. The allegation was made by the president of the alliance, Dr. Chamal Sanjeeva, during a press conference.
මේ සමාගම බංග්ලාදේශ සමාගමක් මෙම සමාගම මගින් ශ්‍රී ලංකා රජයට රුපියල් මිලියන 127ක අධිභාරයක් අය වෙන්න නියමිතයි.
In response, the SPC issuing a statement clarified that the bidder involved in the tender is a supplier registered with the National Medicines Regulatory Authority. However, the company was categorized as a defaulted supplier by the SPC's Board of Directors on the 29th of October 2024 due to non-payment of dues. The SPC explained that although the procurement committee had initially decided to award the tender to this supplier, the Board of Directors, upon further review, identified the company as a defaulter. The SPC also confirmed that necessary steps have been taken to select a suitable bidder from the remaining applicants who had resubmitted tenders. Subsequently, the Doctors' Trade Union Alliance for Medical and Civil Rights today clarified facts regarding the latest developments.
මේ ප්‍රසම්පාදන වංචාව මාධ්‍ය නිවේදනයකින් පමණක් යටපත් කරන්න සූදානම් වෙන්න එපා කියලා අපි.
We acknowledge the letter from the SPC chairman regarding the cancellation of the tender and appreciate that the SPC has accepted the accuracy of the information we reviewed. revealed. However, we would like to advise the chairman of the SPC that simply issuing a media statement cannot conceal fraudulent activities related to the tender process. If these documents were overlooked for more than a month and a half in an organization of which you hold the chairmanship, attempting to cover it up with a press release constitutes a significant financial fraud. Therefore, we will be taking legal action in response to this matter, making use of this press release as well.
අදත් කිහිලිය රඹුක් කැල්ල මේ රටේ සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍යවරයා බව ඔහු මතක තබා ගන්න ඕන.
Committee to Protect Journalists, along with 24 other civil society organizations, called on President Anura Dissanayake to uphold press freedom in his administration, highlighting that swift measures are required to address decades of violence, intimidation and legal repression faced by journalists in Sri Lanka. The organizations requested that the government ensure that law enforcement agencies end the harassment and intimidation of journalists in reprisal for their work. In the letter forwarded to the President, the organizations urged the government to establish an independent, self-regulatory media commission that upholds press freedom. 25 civil society organizations, including the Committee to Protect Journalists, forwarded a letter to President Anura Dissanayake yesterday requesting that he ensure that Sri Lanka upholds press freedom and the right to freedom of expression. The organizations request that the incumbent government implement measures to uphold media freedom and pursue accountability for past crimes against journalists, as outlined in the National People's Power's election manifesto. To that end, they call upon government to reopen or initiate prompt, impartial and transparent investigations to ensure accountability in cases of violence against the press and other violations of human rights and freedom of expression. Highlighting that the investigations should meet international standards, the letter stressed the importance of robust protection mechanisms for witnesses and investigators. The organizations called for law enforcement agencies to facilitate the withdrawal of criminal cases brought against journalists in reprisal for their work. The letter further reads that authorities should not take legal action against journalists on grounds of intimidating public servants. Meanwhile, the organizations also called on the President to repeal the Online Safety Act, which they say grants power to a commission appointed by the President to censor online content. The collective of organizations also called on the President to repeal the Prevention of Terrorism Act, claiming that it has been used to harass and imprison journalists for their work. Their requests also include amending the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act and amending the Personal Data Protection Act to remove provisions allowing the law to override the Right to Information Act. In addition, the letter requested that government establish an independent, self-regulatory media commission that will uphold press freedom and adjudicate matters of journalistic ethics without criminalizing reporters or placing undue restrictions on their work. Clean-up campaigns continued across the island today as well on the government's Clean Sri Lanka initiative. Meanwhile, speaking to media, parliamentarian of the National People's Power, Chandana Suryaracha, revealed that funds will be allocated for the Clean Sri Lanka initiative through the upcoming budget.
A meeting aimed at exchanging ideas with representatives of non-governmental organizations for the ongoing Clean Sri Lanka program was recently held at the auditorium of the Ministry of Public Security and Parliamentary Affairs in Nara Henpita. The meeting, which was chaired by the Additional Secretary of the Ministry, Damayanti Karunaratne, follows a request by the National Secretariat for Non-Governmental Organizations. The meeting saw the participation of the members of the President's Special Task Force for the Clean Sri Lanka initiative. During the discussion, representatives of the NGOs expressed their enthusiasm for the program, describing it as a much-anticipated initiative that could have a significant impact on society. Meanwhile, as part of the Clean Sri Lanka program, a clean-up campaign was organized in Polonnaruwa today to clean the area surrounding the Gal Vihara. Meanwhile, residents and government officials joined hands to clean the Meegoda Economic Centre. In the meantime, officials of the Batticaloa Municipal Council and Batticaloa Prison gathered to clean public places and roads in the city. Inmates of the Batticaloa Prison were also seen participating in the cleaning project. Meanwhile, Deputy Minister of Fisheries, Aquatic and Ocean Resources, Ratna Gamage, engaged in a tour of inspection at the Beruala Fisheries Harbour.
තියෙන මේ ක්ලීන් ශ්‍රී ලංකා වැඩසටහන යටතේ තාමත්ම අපවිත්‍ර තත්ත්වයේ තියෙන අපේ දීවර වරායන් ටික පහසුකම් පුළුල් කරන්න අපි සැලසුම් කරලා තියෙනවා.
In the meantime, parliamentarian of the National People's Power Chandana Suryarachi said that funds will be allocated for the Clean Sri Lanka initiative through the upcoming budget.
Clean Sri Lanka වැඩසටහනට අවශ්‍ය කරන ප්‍රතිපත්තිමය යෝජනා ඒ වගේ මේ සඳහා වන මුදල් වෙන් කිරීම එවැනි කරුණු කාරණා ගණනාවක් සහිතව මේ අයවැය එන්න නියමිතයි.
And with that, let's take a look at the latest political developments of the day.
There is no control over electricity tariffs, fuel prices or the prices of essential foods. We see that the Prime Minister is in a tough situation. The Trade Minister, who was very active before the elections, is now struggling to control the prices of rice and essential foods. We assure the public that there is no shortage in local rice harvests. Meanwhile, Customs has been given a target of 280 billion rupees from vehicle import levies.
They said that people would be able to purchase a car of the model width for 1.2 million rupees. Because of this, people voted for the NPP. What we now ask from Deputy Minister Nalin Hevage is whether the public will still be able to afford the vehicle at 1.2 million rupees after the budget.
දැන් ඔය අවුරුදු 76ක් ආණ්ඩු බිහි වුණා මෙහෙම රැවටිල්ලක් නම් ජනතාව රැවට්ටුවේ නැහැ කිසිම ආණ්ඩුවක්. සමහරු කිව්වනේ මගේ යාළුවෙක් ඉන්නවා ඩොලර් මිලියන 10ක් කැනඩාවෙන් එවනවායි කිව්වා අවුරුදු 4කට පස්සේ දෙන්න. ඒ යාළුවා කොහෙද දන්නේ නැහැ දැන්. තුමාලගේම ප්‍රතිපත්තියද මේ අරගෙන යන්නේ?
අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම. ඒක තමයි අපි මේ කතා කරන්නේ.
Definitely. That is why we say the path of this government is correct. The UNP and other previous governments implemented that practical economic framework. When someone comes to power, we must give them a chance to move forward on the correct path.
And with that, here's a look at more local news in brief.
Several parliamentary officers have been summoned to the Criminal Investigation Department tomorrow to provide statements regarding the inclusion of a doctorate before the name of Minister of Justice and National Integration, Attorney at Law Harshana Nanayakara, on the official Parliament website. Among those summoned are a high-ranking official from the Parliament's House Registry Office. CID officers have also visited Parliament to record statements from its officials as part of the ongoing investigation. Meanwhile, the Agrarian Insurance Board announced that compensation for crops damaged during the floods in November last year will be disbursed by the end of this month. According to the chairman of the board, Pemasri Jasing Arachi, approximately 95% of crop damage assessments have been completed so far. Once the final recommended compensation documents are received from agrarian development centres, the allocated funds will be transferred directly to the bank accounts of the affected farmers. In the meantime, the schoolgirl recently abducted in the Dawlagala area of Kampola was handed over to the care of Dawlagala police by Ampara police officers last night along with the suspected abductor. Subsequently, the suspect along with the other individual connected with the abduction of the girl were remanded until the 20th of January after being produced before the Kampola Magistrates Court. In other local news, Sri Lanka Customs apprehended 2 Chinese nationals over their attempt to smuggle a stock of gemstones out of the country. The stock of gemstones is estimated to be valued at around 17,450,875 rupees. The Deputy Director of Sri Lanka Customs ordered the gemstones to be confiscated and a fine of 100,000 rupees be imposed on each suspect.
Welcome back. Now, container transport drivers allege that container congestion persists despite the President's directives to operate port and customs services around the clock in order to expedite the clearance of imported containers. However, Sri Lanka Customs said that the shortage of clearance agents and container truck drivers is to blame for the congestion. However, Additional Director General and media spokesperson of Sri Lanka Customs, Sivali Arugada, assured that the container congestion will be cleared by tomorrow.
During the past few days, long queues of container transports were seen at the customs terminal in Orogodawatta over issues pertaining to the clearance of imported containers. In light of this situation, on the 12th of January, President Anura Dissanayake convened a meeting with several industry stakeholders, along with the Minister of Transport, Highways, Ports and Civil Aviation, Bimal Ratnayake, at the Presidential Secretariat. During the meeting, the President announced the decision to operate port and customs services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in order to expedite the clearance process of imported containers. Although a slight reduction in queues was observed, container transport drivers claim that small queues continue as the clearance procedures are not being properly executed. However, Sri Lanka Customs says that the delays of clearance agents and drivers are to blame for the delay in the release of imported containers.
459 containers were cleared from the port premises yesterday. On the same day, 245 more containers were cleared from the inspection yards after the conclusion of the inspection process. However, 250 additional containers could have been cleared if the clearance agents had reported to work yesterday. Due to the long weekend, the agents had taken leave and a shortage of container transport drivers was also observed. However, they will report to work tomorrow. After that, we can commence the container clearance process.
In other business news, a delegation of the Sri Lanka Maldives Business Council of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce recently engaged in a business promotion mission at the Maldives. The Sri Lanka Maldives Business Council noted that discussions with the Maldives Ministry of Tourism focused on fostering ecotourism, MICE tourism projects and dual destination promotions. Meanwhile, discussions with the Malé City Mayor's Office centred on opportunities for waste management and urban cleanliness, emphasising recycling, small-scale incineration and leveraging economies of scale. Further, talks with Maldives Port Limited revealed opportunities to expand trade, improve logistical efficiency and explore cost-effective transportation methods such as wooden boat services and ferry connections. The delegation report also detailed numerous opportunities in the Maldives for Sri Lankan companies in sectors such as logistics, tourism, agriculture and construction. And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Stay constantly in touch with Ada Derana, the Sri Lankan news brand of international excellence, for the latest developments around the clock. Thank you for joining and have a good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit adaderana.lk.